I want to welcome everyone to the sixth installment of the Career Accelerator Lecture Series, sponsored by, or I should say, more than just sponsored by, but created by, supported by the School of Engineering Advisory Board. We want to thank everyone for coming. We're excited about this series that they have put together, and we are very glad to be a part of it. I'm Bob Parsons. I'm a professor in civil, environmental, and architectural engineering, and I work with the school on special projects like this, so that's an exciting part of my job. And it is my pleasure to welcome Angela Chammas, a member of our engineering advisory board. She has over 30 years of demonstrated leadership experience in the telecommunications industry. She is a technology futurist, and I'm excited to find out what a technology futurist does. A strategist and visionary thinker who loves working with individuals and organizations to help them rethink, reimagine, and reinvent themselves for the future. Most recently, she was Vice President of Human Capital Strategy and Technology Planning and HR Relationship Management for Sprint. In this role, she was responsible for aligning human capital plans to strategic business plans by applying workforce analytics and business intelligence to human capital strategies. She also led human resource technology planning efforts focused on optimizing the development, delivery, and usage of HR programs, services, and offerings. Prior to assuming this role, Angela worked as the Vice President of Talent Management and HR Relationship Management for Sprint, where she was responsible for leadership development, talent management, strategy analytics, and for staffing of over 14,000 positions annually nationwide. She also held various leadership positions in engineering, information technology, and HR training and development, e-learning architecture. Angela got her Bachelor of Science here in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Kansas, a Master's of Education in Counseling from the University of Houston, a Master of Science degree in Organization and Management Leadership from Capella University. She received her Information Technology Infrastructure Library Foundation certification from Global Knowledge and became a certified professional coach at the Fowler Rainwhite International Institute of Professional Coaching. She is a Board of Trustee members for the Endowment for the University of Kansas and a Dean's Advisory Board member here for our School of Engineering. And she's speaking on leadership lessons I learned along the way. And she'll be starting in just a second. I just want to let everybody know we want your questions. We're excited about your questions. So you'll have the opportunity to chat as we go along. So if you chat, it will generally only be visible by me or Angela, and I'll be collecting those throughout the hour, and then at the end, I'll ask those questions. So as things go along and as questions come to you and things you'd like to know, go ahead and chat, and I'll see those, and away we go. So that's how this is going to work. We'll have Angela will present. We'll finish up with about 15 minutes of questions. That'll be our presentation. This is being recorded, so it is available either via the Zoom, or later it will be posted on YouTube on the School of Engineering webpage. So that's how this is going to go. And with that, I want to welcome Angela again and turn it over to Angela and take it away. I think you have, yes, you have permission to share your screen. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, I clicked on, okay. All right, are you seeing my screen now?
We see your screen.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am so excited to be a part of this learning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some insights with you. I want to first just say Happy Veterans Day. My father was in the Navy, and I had uncles in there as well, so I want to just give out a thanks to all the veterans for their service to our country, which is important to all of us. Now, as it was presented, one of the things I want to talk to you about, as it shows on this slide, is leadership, but not just any leadership, how you can lead yourself and why that's important. But before we get started with that, let me turn to the next screen. He already went over a lot of my history and what I did with my career. And I will say that I am extremely fortunate to have had the mechanical engineering degree as my foundation in order to build upon that and to do the things and deliver the successes and the outcomes that I had throughout my career. I don't think it would have been the same had I not had that foundation. So I'm very thankful for the school for giving me that opportunity. And it didn't happen just through a lot of things that I did. It happened because one of the students from the School of Engineering came during spring break to my high school when I was a senior, and they came to talk about engineering to our class at that time. Now, I had not known about engineering or whether or not that was something I was considering, even though my older brother was already in electrical engineering at another school. But I was very intrigued because it was shared to me the things that I could do with an engineering degree to make a difference. So within a month, I was accepted at KU, started in the summer program, and the rest is history. So I'm extremely fortunate and thankful for having that opportunity. Now, my career, as you see, I had a long career, and again, a lot of different positions that started out in engineering, but ended up in HR. And people ask me, well, how did an engineer end up in HR? And actually, it's not that difficult to do, because again, engineering gives you that foundation to build upon. And I took that, and as I continued to develop and get additional degrees, I was able to elevate myself to other opportunities that I could serve well. But what I want to just share with you about this slide is what happened to me when I left KU in May after graduation, and 3 weeks later, I started at AT&T. And I started as a circuit design engineer in their leadership development program. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't know what leadership was at that time. I didn't know what a supervisor did at that time. But the day I was hired and I walked into the office where my job was going to be, I all of a sudden had people reporting to me. And I had no clue of what I was supposed to do. But the good thing is AT&T had at that time what they had called a leadership development program. And every night, not every night, a couple of nights a week, we had to stay behind for hours and learn how to be great supervisors and how to lead teams. And that gave me the foundation to build upon so that I could continue in leadership roles going forward. And I knew that at that time, that would be something really critical and important to do. So when you think about leadership, even your personal leadership is going to be important. And anything you can do to learn more along the way is going to be helpful to you from day one. So let me go on to talk about what it is I'm going to share with you today. We talked about my story again, my career and how I started out, but I also want you to understand how important leadership and engineering is in the field together, and how that has led to some individuals that are leaders, prominent leaders in the industries that serve us. But then I also want to share with you what are the 3 phases of leadership, and then focus mainly on self-leadership and the importance of emotional intelligence as a leader. And one of my favorite subjects is what I call the brand called you, because every day, every moment when you walk somewhere, do something, you are becoming your brand, and people are branding you as such, as the individual that you are. And sometimes we don't realize how important that is. And so I want to give you some awakening and some tips on what you can think about now and as you go forward in your career when that happens, on how to present yourself in a personal brand that allows you to do the things and achieve the things that you want to do in life. So I hope that works for you guys, and this will be something that you can use going forward. Now, I will ask a favor of you. I'm going to share with you what I call or information seeds. And if you know what seeds are, seeds have within them the full development or growth of what it wants to become. But it doesn't happen unless that seed is nurtured, taken care of, tended to over a length of time. So when the time is right, you can get the benefit of that full seed. So what I will ask you to do is, as I share with you information, know that there's so much more to the story than what I'm sharing. And I would like for you to continue to nurture these seeds of information about leadership in your brand so that when the time comes, so when you walk in that door like I did at AT&T, whatever opportunity you walk in, you will have that seed, what's in that seed, ready to take on those positions and those jobs and be the leader that they want you to be. This is just the beginning of the story, but again, there's so much more, and I would love for you to look at it that way. The other thing I would give you is a tip that you can do. When I get to a particular slide, feel free to take a snapshot of it so that you can have it to do more research on later. I do that a lot myself when I'm trying to learn something, and I think it will be a valuable tool for you to use as well as we go through this. So with that, let me go to the next slide. Now, engineers in the news. This was important to me because when I started as an engineer, one of the things that really hit me was that there were so many leaders at that time, no matter what the industry, no matter what type of job they were in, that had engineering degrees. And that always perplexed me, but it also excited me because what it told me was that an engineering degree is the foundation to do just about anything you want to do in leadership. So I was curious to see, is that still the case today? So I just went out on Google and I said, let me ask that question to see, are there other leaders that started out with engineering degrees? And within less than 5 minutes, it popped up. These individuals, and you probably know a lot of these. For example, Darren Woods, the CEO and chairman of ExxonMobil, started with his electrical engineering degrees. Jeff Bezos, the chairman of Amazon and CEO, has an electrical engineering and computer science degree. Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors, has an electrical engineering and an MBA. And forgive me if I don't pronounce these names right, but Sundar, the CEO of Alphabet or Google, has his BS in metallurgical engineering and material science and engineering master's degree. And Tim Cook with Apple has an industrial engineering and MBA degree. And our own Alan Mulally, who's the former president and CEO of Ford Motor Company, has his BS and MS in aeronautical and astronomical engineering from the University of Kansas. So again, it's just like it was when I started out. An engineering degree is a great foundation to do things, other things, and to go into other areas that you want to lead in and be successful. And this is still the proof that we see. Now, the other reason why it is really important that I wanted to have this time to talk with you is he mentioned I am a futurist. And by that, it means that I enjoy looking at and envisioning what can be and what will be. And I do that by reading about new technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and how that's going to rapidly change the world we live in the future. And one of the futurists that I follow is Gerd Linhard, and he wrote this quote that really hit home with me. He says, we're here at a point in our history for the very first time that humanity will change faster in the next 20 years than it did in the previous 300 years. And that's because technology is now a defining factor of our societies. Now, when you step back and look at that, it's almost as if a lot of people can't even comprehend moving that fast. But the truth is, he is right on target with how quickly things are changing. But the other thing that I notice is that leaders have to prepare. This is not something that you can take lightly. And I don't care if you are a leader that is normally someone who works in technology, everybody needs to be able to understand how technology is rapidly changing the world we live in, work in, and consume in. And so my question or ask of you to think about, especially as I plant these seeds of what leadership is all about, will you help lead the way? Because we need all the help we can get. What I'm afraid of is that there's a few people that are making a lot of the decisions. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities for others to get involved. So I, again, would ask you to think about what do you see and what will you see your role in the future, knowing that things are changing that fast to help us lead the way. And with that, I want to talk to you then about what the 3 leadership areas are that I think are important for you to understand. Now, this is a very, I would say, a very simple framework. If you go out there and you look at other leadership and management frameworks, there are more than you can probably count on a couple of hands. But I wanted one that, again, would plant some seeds to get you to start thinking about what's important for you and how can you begin to develop inside of you what it will take for you to lead well now and on into the future. The first one is about leading yourself. As the quote says at the bottom of that page, you can't effectively lead others until you're able to lead yourself. And that quote is extremely important, and it's true. If you don't understand how to manage your own time, how to specify goals and make accomplishments and achieve things on your own, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity or hope for you to be able to do that with others. So one of the first things when we talk about leadership is getting people to understand that you got to look in the mirror and say, how do I lead that person first? So then I can step up and know how to lead others. And then when you lead others, you're looking at, again, teams, organizations, where there are many, many different components that you would have to step up and be able to manage and lead concurrently. And that takes skill and knowledge and understanding of what steps need to take to lead others and teams. And so that's why this is not something, I'm not a believer that you're born a leader, especially not in today's time. I think you definitely have to put in the time so that you can create and develop the skills and the opportunity for you so that you can successfully lead yourself and teams and others as well. And the third part of this framework looks at what we call leading the business. And this could be leading, again, a company, a business organization, but it is all encompassing too, because that's where you get into regulatory issues. How do you work with the customer? How do you work with the different departments? So that in itself, again, is another area of leadership that really requires someone to take time studying and understanding what you need to do to be successful there, but not until, in my opinion, you take care of number one, and I would also say number two on this page. But with that, I really think what I want to do today is just spend time talking about leading self, because I think that would be the most valuable for our time together. And then we can build upon there if there's an opportunity in the future. And when you look at leading self, I created this diagram because I'm a very visual person, but I wanted to present what I would say are some of the key elements that you need to become familiar with when we talk about leading self. And again, you will find all kinds of different models and diagrams about what it means to lead self. A lot of them will contain these same components, and then there's other components that you can probably add to this as well. But I thought that these 6 would be the most important to really talk about today in helping you understand what it means to lead yourself. The first one is self-awareness. And self-awareness is just like it says. This is like, do you understand you first? Do you know, are you aware of how you show up in any situation or circumstances? Do you understand what's driving you that's based on your core values, your core beliefs? And then how are you going about understanding what it will take for you to create your best life, the life that you envision you want to have going forward? Self-awareness really is about, again, looking from the inside out. And one way to do that is you've got to be honest with what your strengths and your weaknesses are. But because until you do that, you don't know what you can leverage in the right way or what you need to work on for a while before you start leveraging that. Now, if I start sounding, I don't know, I'm a coach as well. I'm a leadership coach. So some of this may come across that way because I really do have your best interests at heart. And I want you to understand the importance of what I'm sharing with you and how you can use this to start as those seeds and those stepping stones of starting to cultivate the best leader you can be, especially a self-leader at this time. The other one is self-acceptance. Now, self-acceptance really gets to, do you understand and are you satisfied with how you're showing up and are you happy with that? And this is where you have to be completely honest with yourself. And again, understanding your strengths and improving on what your weaknesses are because you understand those is one of the ways to get to self-acceptance and how you want to do things. I'll tell you, I had an experience where, again, I didn't learn a lot of leadership in college at that time. This was the 70s. But after I started work as an engineer, I was asked to go and speak to a middle school about engineering in the city of Kansas City because they wanted to get more students to start thinking about that. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. Little did I know, I had no speaking skills. I did not realize that I would be speaking to a crowd of 500 and that I would have to come across one way or the other to help these young students understand the importance to start thinking, again, planting some seeds about engineering. I remember I'm sitting on the stage and the HR person at that time went up to the podium to announce me. And I was ready to, had my notes and things to talk about engineering. But the minute I got up there, I froze. Now, I don't know a lot that happened after that because I don't even think I finished the speech, let alone started it. But that was an eye-opening and an awakening for me because not shortly afterwards, I realized that was a skill that I had not looked after well or didn't even realize I needed. And I immediately found a way to start developing that. That's why I think it's important to talk about and think about your strengths and weaknesses so you don't have one of those episodes that I did. And they really didn't ask me to go back and speak again at that time. But, it was a learning lesson for me. I still went through the leadership development program at AT&T and learned a lot. But I needed to be open with myself on what I could and couldn't do, and then make sure that I look at what I can improve from my weaknesses. And that's part of what it means to really accept yourself and be truthful. And if you're not to yourself, then it's not going to help you in the long run. All right, the other ones I want to talk about is growth. And this is really about how are you developing yourself continually so that you are ready for whatever challenges come your way. From a perspective of your career or your life. And growth is really about being open to receiving feedback on what's working well for you and what's not as perceived by others. And you can give yourself feedback as well, like I did. And then looking at the opportunity to develop that if you so feel that that is the right thing to do. But more important than what happens day to day is that what I learned is that has to be a commitment that happens lifelong. I am still today reading papers, books. I've always been a reader, and from a book perspective, my sister and I, for some reason, that was honed in on us to get as much education as we can and read all the time. I remember when I was coming to Chicago, where I live now, from Kansas City, and the moving van person told me, he says, I have never seen so many books in my life, because half of the truck were my books that I had been collecting and reading over my lifetime. And I still have a large collection today, and I pull out books from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, whatever is necessary at this time. So that to me is part of what it means to be a lifelong learner and taking care of your self-growth, because again, as that quote said, things are changing so fast that this is our opportunity to we won't necessarily keep up with it, but try and stay within the boundaries of knowing what's going on and being prepared for what's going to happen next. And the fourth one I want to talk about real quick is self-management. And this is where, again, these are just some must-have skills you will have to have for your career, and things that I think are also potentially important for life going forward. And as an example, this self-management skills could be, do you get to meetings on time? That's a stickler for me right now. It wasn't probably as much when I was very, very young, but somehow over the years, it was put into me that it is so important to be somewhere on time so that you don't disrespect the others that have made commitments as well. I had the fortunate opportunity of, when I worked for Sprint, we had what we called a PAL system, purpose, agenda, and limits. And no one was to go to a meeting unless the person who was calling that meeting presented a PAL. And then no one had the obligation to stay at the meeting if the meeting didn't start on time. Trust me, that changed the culture of the whole company, because that was expected from the CEO on down. And it worked because everybody was on time. There was a clear thinking on what needs to be discussed and covered in the meeting. And everybody knew what they were coming to the meeting for and what their roles were. And so it's little things like that that we don't think about, but that's the way to manage the skills and the resources that you have so that you can accomplish the objectives and the goals that are laid out before you. And again, this is part of owning your weaknesses and strengths. The one that talks about controlling your impulses, that's critical as well, because we all have them. You know, we hear something and it may upset us, but self-management could be, okay, do not bring that up right now if you're in a meeting. In fact, one of the things that we learned in leadership was that if there was a disagreement that you had with somebody else and it wasn't important for anybody else to know about that, if you were in a meeting, you waited till the meeting was over, or you called that person outside and you just had a one-on-one. Those are the things that we talked about when I was going through my career. As far as understanding what self-management was about, it was also about respecting the rights and the opportunity to work successfully with others and not to disrespect someone in that process. So that's really what I wanted to talk to you about, the first four things about what it means to be a self-leader. But one of my favorite things is looking at the purpose. What's it all about? Like it says, that we all show up every day with a purpose in mind, that there's a reason why we're here. And it's so important to get clear about that, because trust me, when you do, you'll be able to, I think you get a new step in a new walk in your step, and you walk with this air that knows that I'm here and I know why I'm here. So having purposefulness as part of your leadership is, again, your sense of purpose. And it's a determination to know that nothing will stop me now. I know what I need to achieve, and this is what I'm going to do to get that done. And then it's also about having great value and significance and knowing that you are valued and what you are doing is significant and you are going to make a difference. Trust me, when I was growing up, my grandmother used to, and I won't sing this because I know we're recording this, my grandmother used to say this verse that said, if I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living will not be in vain. That stayed with me and has stayed with me my entire life, so that every day I got up, I knew why I was doing that, because as an engineer, as a leader, as a professional, I was doing it to help somebody as I pass along. And that was my reason and my purpose for what I did and how I stepped forward. Believing that you're here for a reason again, and that the journey ahead for you is worthwhile is extremely important. And valuing the part you are given to play. Every last one of you that are listening to this has a part to play in this world and a contribution to make. That's the reason why you're here. I don't ever want you to doubt that. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you can get excited about, I'm here for a reason, and this is what I'm here to do. That's, again, my self-talk to myself, as I self-lead myself, is making sure that when I get up, I know why I'm getting up and what I'm here to do when I go to do my thing in my career. And it's adherence to that purpose, that I'm here to achieve something and why it's so important. I went out on the website and found Dean's notice or message to what engineers' purpose is for KU. And it says, engineers constantly strive to innovate and improve, whether it's developing that new technology or creating cost-effective solutions. Everyday challenges or designing environmentally friendly products. As I underline here, engineers seek to make the world better, a better place. If you don't remember anything else about that statement, know that you are here to become an engineer to make the world a better place, and what you do matters. Again, purposefulness is one of those things that you got to get clear about in order to self-lead in your career and in your life. And one of the ways to do that, I didn't realize how important that was at first, because a lot of these are lessons I learned way after the fact. But while I was in my taking my Master of Science in Leadership, one of the actions we had to do was to write out what our vision was, our mission. This is personally from a leadership perspective. What guiding principles and beliefs do we have? And what do we have as a leadership philosophy? And with that, that's exactly what I did. And this is exactly a copy of the diagram that I shared with my professor that I turned in. But it meant so much to me to be able to share this and to sit down, and it took hours. It wasn't something that you do right away, but it took hours and it took time, but it was time worth it, so that I could be able to get clear about what's important to me as a leader. For example, and you probably can't read this, but I'll read it to you. My leadership vision that I wrote was to be forever remembered as a leader who lived to help others, honoring the hearts and the life purpose of those I served, while creating positive change and enriching the personal and professional lives of others. And then my mission under that said to connect who I am with what I do each day, positively, energetically, and passionately through purposeful leadership, always in service, honoring the best and the highest in everyone, building a better tomorrow, one day at a time. Now, in all honesty, again, I wish I had done this sooner, because from the moment I had this laid out, and again, some of the principles that I can read here, I can share with you. One says to model the way to others. Another one says to serve the needs of the organization and its members, to passionately give of myself in service to enable the job to be done. And it goes on and on and on. What was helpful for me was, when the day I had written that, from that day on, every lead team that I had the privilege and honor of serving, I reviewed with them these two documents, because I wanted them to know exactly who I was as a leader, and who they, would see me as a leader and hold me accountable, so that they would know why I was showing up and what I felt my purpose was in leading them. And then I had it also hanging on my wall in my office, so people were reminded when they came in here, here's why I woke up this morning to come into this office and to help this organization lead, and the people within it to be successful. And again, it was a really powerful way of being open with my team, with myself. And I would really recommend, if you get a chance, take the time to think about, and you can do that at any stage in your career, even as a student, and then you can adjust it accordingly. But I would say this is a time that you can take the time to think about what's your purpose, and start thinking about what your vision is for how you see yourself showing up every day, how you see yourself engaging, and what do you feel are driving you as far as your beliefs and your principles that you will hold true to as a student and as an engineer. So I hope that was helpful in really understanding what some of the ways are to start looking at developing your self-leadership skills. But I also put here some ways that you can think about that will help you to begin strengthening that as well. Again, I already talked about defining your vision and values and your beliefs. As a student and an engineer, think about being a lifelong learner and know what you're passionate about. I know I'm passionate about technology. For some reason, I can't get enough of reading about the latest technology and trying to find somebody to talk to about that. But I'm okay with that. And I've been that way pretty much all of my career and my life. And I know that that's what I'm passionate about because I truly believe that technology is a gift to humanity. And it's how we use that that will make the biggest difference. Other things you can do is accept and learn from your failures. I would tell people and myself that if I fail at something, I will fail fast and learn and then move on. It's time to move on. Now we know what doesn't work, but it's really important to not only think about what you succeeded at, but what could you have done differently that didn't go quite the way you wanted it to go. The other one, know why and who you are being as a leader. What hat are you wearing? And you want people to recognize when you walk in the room. Again, that's critical to know. If you don't know, then you may not be sure on how you need to respond or even show up. But when that clarity comes there, you know when it's time to speak up, speak out, and why you're doing that as well. I'm a vision person, and I visualize the future. And one of the things that I was labeled as in my career was a visionary. That was something that was a strength of mine. I am always thinking about the future, and I could come up with all kinds of ways it could look differently. So that was something that, a skill that I would bring to the table to complement all of the other leaders and their ideas at the table. I remember my last one-on-one with my boss at Sprint, and she said, oh yeah, you're that visionary who thinks way up here, and we got to come way down here to kind of understand. But that's been going on, that was for the 20-something years I was at Sprint. And so we kind of laughed about that, but that was something that I was very passionate about, but also used it to do what I could to make a difference. And then other way to strengthen this is know that this is a head and heart game. This is not just by thinking about things, but this is truly that you feel and understand what you're doing as a leader and why you're leading that way. It's also that you listen and you care about what's happening to others and yourself, and you mean it, and they understand that. So again, these are just what I would say are some things you can think about, how you can start strengthening and becoming aware of what your self-leadership approach is. And by starting that, I guarantee you, if you look at this as seeds that I'm giving you, take a picture of the screen. These are things you can build upon even while you're still a student, and definitely as you start your career. And it'll make things make more sense to you as you begin your career, but it also help you be able to achieve and do the things that you want to within your career. Now, the other thing that was on that diagram was the emotional intelligence. And I left it to the last of the 6 items because a lot of people don't take it as seriously as they think they should. And I want to make sure you understand why emotional intelligence, or what they call the emotional quotient, or EQ, is so critical to successful leadership. In fact, I guarantee you cannot be successful as a leader if you don't understand and embrace emotional intelligence. This definition talks about it being the ability to monitor, understand, and use and manage not only your own emotions, but the people that you interact with in order to minimize any negative occurrences or relieve any stress in that situation. It's about being able to show compassion for other people and being able to listen and then effectively communicate so that you're always in tune with who you're trying to relate with. And it's also one of the things that you need in order to overcome challenges and obstacles. And I think about that when we're going through this pandemic, and I think about the leaders that are out there having to understand what employees are going through, what their families are going through. That's tough, but you've got to be there for your team as a leader in times like these, and think of ways of how you can help facilitate them through this process that helps by understanding, again, what they're going through. And as a quote there says, it takes something more than just intelligence to act intelligently. This is what I think about. You really have to have your head and your heart in the game and really connect with not just what you see in front of you, but what you know about the individuals that you engage with. Now, here's why emotional intelligence is so important and why you should care. And this is from a survey done by a PSI services company. And I think they're in the human resource consulting type business. But anyway, they talked about and did a survey and wrote about these are the things that we need to think about and why emotional intelligence is so critical. They found out that 90% of top performers have high emotional intelligence. That number surprised me, but then as I thought about it, I thought I can understand that because they understand and can feel what's happening with themselves and their organizations. And EI is a top predictor of high potential, so it goes hand in hand. They also said only 7% of graduates that are entering the workforce have high emotional intelligence. This tells me that the conversation should not end today between you and I. This tells me that, again, this seed is one that you really want to focus on cultivating and nurturing so that you become one of those 7% that when you graduate and you go into the workplace, you are ready with at least a foundational understanding of why emotional intelligence is so important. They also found out that leaders with emotional intelligence are more than 2 times likely to be emotionally resilient. Again, crisis and chaos is going to happen. It's how you lead through those with yourself and your team that's going to be critical in order to come out on the other side successful. So again, it's not just what you do for what's happening day to day. It helps you get through the tough times as well. 67% of competencies is essential to effective leadership performance relate to emotional intelligence. Again, hearing, understanding, feeling, having compassion, caring, all of that comes into how strong your emotional intelligence is as a leader. And then they found out, which I'm sure companies like, that managers trained in EI have been shown to deliver 2 times the profit than those that are not. And again, this is where I think a lot of companies, knowing this is why they invest time and money. I've had training on EI in some of the leadership classes I've had to go through in my career. Why they actually put in money to train people during this time, because they know it has an impact, a positive impact on the bottom line going forward. And it's that quote at the bottom, I like that one too. It says emotional intelligence accounts for 80% of career success. Now again, I put a little model together. These are just, again, a few of the elements that you will find emotional intelligence, but there's some of the ones that I think are some of the most critical as well. And I'll go to the next page because it kind of talks a little bit more about those. We already talked about self-awareness. It's the same thing, understanding who you are. But the next one is for EI to get stronger, you've got to also have self-regulation. And this is your ability to monitor and manage your energy, your emotions, I would say your outburst, or how you react. It's about controlling your behavior accordingly and in the right way in order to get the right results. Now I will say one of the things, I'm a high energy person, but I channeled it in what I would say is a positive way, because the folks that work with me know I have a high energy. I'm walking around and I'm really engaging with people, but I do it in a positive way where I am not going to disrespect you in public. We may have our one-on-one behind closed doors, but my thing is that I want to give out positive energy because I want to positively engage my team, and I want it to start with me. So that's one of the ways that I understand and use and self-regulate my emotional intelligence. You also have to have motivation, behaving in a particular way for a reason, and understanding that you're doing it. And then understanding and trying to understand what desired behavior are you trying to accomplish and get out of that? How does this and what you're doing connect to what's important to you and the values that you have? Knowing why you do something versus not do something else. This reminds me, when I started as an engineer, there was one of the executives that on everybody's birthday in engineering, everybody, he would give you a call and on the phone, we didn't have cell phones back then, and give you and tell you happy birthday, glad you're part of the team. He did not miss a call with anybody. If he missed you, he'd leave a voicemail. And it became one of those things we talked about. It was so precious to us as engineers that we kept saying, oh my God, he remembers us. He remembered me. And was a little bit, I would say spooky, was that you'd go into the elevator with him, he knew your name. And we had a pretty big engineering department. But that motivation for him to make sure we knew how much we meant to him was extremely critical and important. And I was really glad to see him as an example showing how motivation can help build a bond between the team. I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit here. Empathy, again, understanding the thoughts and the feelings that we have for each other, not just our own, but trying to understand and respond to the feelings of others. And then those social skills, your body language. You know, if you're sitting in a meeting like this, that probably means you're either not engaged or you don't like what you're hearing. So really understanding how that is impacting you as well is critical. And some of the levels, and I won't go into any detail with these, but know that there are different competency levels that they found out for really starting to develop your emotional intelligence. So don't expect to be that expert in the beginning, because the novice really doesn't know a lot about it and may not be exhibiting some of those behaviors, but they see them. And then it continues to advance throughout your career, where eventually, after you spend some time or even gone through some of the training for it, you can become an expert on this. But I just wanted you to know that you don't have to start at the top, but the important part is to start with that. One thing I did want to share with you about the emotional intelligence that I do think is important is to know that it truly focuses on what we call the iceberg model, where that means that there are parts that people can see, you know, how you are emotionally engaged, you know, through your habits, your behaviors, how you analyze and the actions. Those things are visible and easy for people to observe, but people can't see your attitudes. They can't see your emotions underneath. They don't know your personal beliefs unless you tell them. They don't know necessarily what you fear. And those are the things that may have an impact on how you show up, you know, as part of your team or leading your team and part of that workforce. The thing that's really critical is the things that impact your team or your leadership most are the things that are unseen. So understanding how your values, your beliefs, and your emotions cause you to act, the habits you have and the skills you have will go a long way for really understanding what you're doing and why you're doing some of the things when you show up and engage with others. Another critical way of really getting to know your self-leadership and what you need to do to develop that going forward. Now with that, here are some things that you can go ahead and start to improve as far as your emotional intelligence. This first one, I don't know there's not a lot of opportunities probably right now to do that, but look for opportunities to get out of your comfort zone, because that will challenge you in order to get you to think about doing things differently. Become aware, we talked about that. Ask somebody. We used to have, we had coaches, executive coaches at Sprint. And one of the things we would talk about how we would show up, in meetings and so forth. So at times we would ask that person to, I want you to sit in the back of the room. I'm going to engage in this meeting with my peers or whoever and just observe. And then we'll have a talk about it afterwards. You tell me what you thought I did well and what I probably could change differently. And that was really helpful in order to get some feedback on what they felt was working and what wasn't. You need to look for opportunities to be able to walk in the shoes of someone else so you can get used to understanding how to engage and feel what others are feeling, because that's what leaders do. If you got a mentor or coach, again, as I talked about, they can help you with those blind spots that you're not normally or necessarily looking at. And then that's also the same way with an accountability partner. You can do that as students. If there's something you want to work on, have someone that you can talk with about that and make some commitments and have them help you to be accountable to those commitments that you're making. The other thing that I think works really, really well is to have fun and smile as much as you can. That was something I did on a regular basis every day. I'm walking down the hall. I don't care who I passed. I smiled. And my intent was to hopefully bring a smile to their face as well. And then again, ask yourself these questions. What are you doing well? What could you do differently? And how would you do things differently if you had the opportunity? And finally, I just want to really quick talk about personal branding, because that is so critical, again, as how you show up and how you perceived when you walk in a room or you're in a group of other people and engaging. As it says here, personal branding is really about marketing yourself and your career as a brand so people know just exactly what you have to offer. It's about defining yourself as a leader and who you are. And a couple of things that I'm going to share with you that I shared with my team, because we talked about personal branding quite a bit, that I would recommend that you do, especially as you're starting out thinking about how to create your personal brand. The first one is you got to get to know you real well. What are you're best at? What is authentically you? What's your strength? We talked about your passions, your values. This is, again, critical because that's what's going to enable you to understand why you show up and do the things that you do. The other thing that you can do is don't hide who you are. You have a chance to let your gift and your light shine through. And this is not the opportunity or the time to hide it. Because again, right now, we're going through a lot of change in society and in this world. And you might just be that one we've been looking for to help us get over a hump that we've not been able to. So I always encourage people to be yourself, because together we can make things happen. And that goes to, I recommend that at times you be a thermostat versus a thermometer. And when you think about that, a thermometer is something that just checks the temperature of a room, but the thermostat that we have changes the temperature of a room. And leaders are looked to for those opportunities where it is time and the right time we need to change things here because it's time for us to do things differently. So look for those opportunities that you can be a thermostat and say, I got another idea. We need to go another way, or have another recommendation, instead of just saying, yes, 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 this is how we should do it. I also think that it's important for you to be clear and how you uncover your uniqueness, what's different about you. I put on there an edge walker, and an edge walker is someone who you see that there's something that needs to be done and everybody gets in line because this is the way we've always done it. An edge walker is someone who say, excuse me, I'm stepping out of line and I'm going over to the edge here and I want to look to see if there's something else we've missed or another way we can do it. And it's someone who doesn't just follow the status quo, but they do it in a positive way by bringing new insights into the group or the team so that they can think about things differently. One of the things that I love being was an edge walker. I would come in there and say, okay, I know we've done it this way for 10 years. But here's something else you haven't thought about doing. Companies today are looking for edge walkers, somebody who is willing to step out of line and say, I'm willing to take a chance and look at doing something differently. That's one of the ways, again, you can be a thermostat versus a thermometer. And then finally, you got to know your wake-up call. Why you get up every morning, why you do what you do. All of these kind of go together, that it's all about knowing you. And as I mentioned before, I stay grounded to what my grandmother shared with me, is that I'm getting up every morning because I want to help somebody as I pass along. The other thing that I want to share is that it's so also important when you come to brand, is that think about not being a copycat, but what I call an original copy. And let me give you an example. When I started my career at AT&T in engineering, this was in the 70s, there weren't many people in engineering that looked like me. There weren't any women. I was one of the only ones in my group. And so I thought it was important for me to look like I fit in. I cut my hair, I put my bow tie on, had my suit, and I was blending in. It took me a while to realize, again, that I needed to own and accept that I had something for my uniqueness to give. And how dare I cover that up to try to blend in. So one of the things I recommend people when they start in their careers is go in there as an original copy. Be you, be the thinker that you are. You're the only one who has your experiences. You're the only one who can enable and release your potential that you have. You want to create a future for yourself. You know what that is. You can bring a fresh voice and an original voice to it. Do not hide behind and try to be just like everybody else. Be that original copy and be proud of who you are. And then finally, there are some power sources that I wanted to share with you. Traditionally, when we think about power sources, we think about reward, that, somebody who can reward me, or somebody who has power because of their status, somebody who's an expert who has power. But I think about other power sources that I think it's important for you to think about and use. And again, I would encourage you to do a little bit more digging on your own so that you can get a little bit more familiar with these. The first ones, and I'm only going to go over a couple of these in each of those, is connected network. And this is, again, the relationships that you build, how you stay in touch and connect with those that will add meaning to your life as well as you add meaning to theirs. But I do recommend that you also have to think about delayering those relationships that are unhealthy, that are not adding but maybe taking away from who you're trying to be. And don't get caught up in size. We've got influencers online who says, oh, I got 1 million people following me. Well, if the 1 million people aren't doing you any good, that's not going to help. But if you've got 10 people that are rock solid partners and you can network with, that's what matters. That's what matters when you talk about a connected network. The other thing is technology adoption or technical adoption. I noticed when I was in the workplace that one of the things people gravitated to is someone who knew about the technology that was coming or they heard about. And they eagerly looked for people and leaders who were willing to try new technologies, be the first ones to step up so that the rest of the company could see it. They would be the ones that would keep pace with the change. They kept on reading things. When I was in my last job, one of the things that I brought into Sprint was the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to use within employee surveys so that we could give an opportunity. I had data scientists working for me, and they would be crunching numbers and coming up with the results. It takes weeks sometimes. But when we went to using machine learning and artificial intelligence, we were able to get results in hours after thousands and thousands of employees had participated. And again, that was just a seed to show that the opportunity is there to use technology, but that's what one of the areas of influence that a person can have is that you're able to bring a new thought to the table and how you can use some of this technology to take the organization or the team forward. Energy field, we kind of talked about that. You've got to have your self-confidence, and you got to be able to smile a while. And then reputation, your uniqueness, as I talked about, is important, but you got to know what you're standing out for. and be willing to stand out of the crowd for what it is that you will be able to bring to the table that someone else may not be able to. And be proud of that. Be proud to be your own personal billboard that you can reflect on positively in your organization. Innovative knowledge, I was known for the phrase, think a new thought, because I was always, again, a visionary, thinking that there has to be a better way, and there always is a better way. We just haven't figured it out yet. But thinking about where we're going in the future and what we would need to get there and inspire people to think about being innovative and creative is really critical as a leader. Decision ownership, resource accountability. This is really being able to use what resources you have and developing the most value for those resources. It could be, again, the expertise on your team. It could be the expertise you bring to the table, the decisions that you own as a leader. How do you use those so that it capitalizes on the value it provides, and that becomes part of your brand as well? And so finally, the one thing I want to share with you is these are, again, ways to strengthen your personal leadership. Get clear about what makes you unique. Look for acquiring some new capabilities, especially those that are in short supply out there. You know, especially as people are looking at machine learning and some of the new technologies that are out there. Having that knowledge can be very critical in helping you develop your brand as someone who can add value. Build your better networks, increase your social capital as far as who you engage with, and also what you do online. And that's probably another conversation for another day, but be cognizant of how you present yourself online. But it does go a long way with helping you develop your brand when the time is right. Stay positive and don't be afraid to let your light shine as a student and as an engineer as you start your career. So with that, I have a question for you. Are you the one the world's been looking for? And I hope the answer is yes, because right now and going forward, we need technology leaders who will look for doing what today may seem impossible, who are not afraid to reach for the unreachable, and who have the ability to envision that which is invisible to most. And as, again, for me, it was my ability to let my light shine so that I could help others in my career as an engineer. My call to action to you is don't just think about what I gave you. Again, these are seeds that are planted. Take some time to sit down, cup of coffee, soda, whatever you need, get a pen, and write out what is important to you and what you want to do with this information that I'm sharing with you, because that's what's going to make it your seed grow so that you can leverage this information today and tomorrow by thinking through it and knowing what it is that you want to do to continue to develop in these areas. One of my last quotes is from Marianne Williamson, and I share this with a lot of my teams, is don't be afraid, basically, of the light, where it says our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, it's that we are powerful beyond measure, and it is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We have to ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous, and actually, and I totally believe this, who are you not to be that person? So I want to thank you. Remember, when it comes to the future, technical leadership is extremely important right now, and that's where you come in. My generation led us up to this point, this current point in the world, but it's really up to you to take it from here, to lead the way for us. I am future generations really look forward to, and I am really excited to seeing what do you and what can you create going forward by your leadership and doing the right things. So I want to thank you. And I'm going to stop sharing and see if we have any questions. I can't hear you.
Thank you. Sorry. I do that every time. Thank you, Angela. That was great. We appreciate that. We've got some questions here for you. So here we go. Some questions from the college period of life. As college students, we try to enhance our resume and experience college as much as possible. What is something we can do to avoid biting off more than we can chew or taking on too many commitments?
While you're in college?
While you're in college, yeah.
Okay. Well, and again, I think there has to be a focus. I think if you're looking to experience things that you value and that are important to you, then I would prioritize those. But I would also learn how to say no. Because as I said, I asked that question, is it going to serve you well now and in the long term? And some things right now may not while you're in college. But you got to think about, again, these are seeds you're planting. And is this something that's going to help you, or is it just taking up time and is not adding value to it? So I look at it as, is this a value added thing? And if not, can I say no? And I hope that helps.
Are there certain experiences a student in college should seek out beyond just the classroom?
I definitely would say any leadership experience you can have. From my experience, learn to talk, to speak.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hard lesson I had to learn, but I went to Toastmasters, best organization to learn how to speak, and now I can't stop talking. But to me, those things that, again, help you develop your best self as far as the self-leadership that I talked about, I would focus on the opportunity to do those things. The other thing I would say is learn how to successfully work in a group, because in business, we put minds together and they've got to collectively come up with solutions, and you've got to be able to work successfully together. And we've noticed that when I was at Sprint, one of the roles my organization had was to take care of the 200 to 300 interns that we hired across the company each year. And so we would talk to them about what was important to develop going forward, and to ask a lot of questions, the organization that they're in, to be able to capture information, to take notes, to develop their ability to even conduct a meeting. And then how you showed up in the organization. I remember one young lady who I saw was an intern walking down the hallway, and she had her head down and she would not make eye contact with anybody. I felt it my obligation to quietly pull her aside and say, you belong here, and let them know that. And that was, to me, important for her to understand. And I saw her do some of that in the meeting too, is that speak up, talk up, because if you weren't to be here, you wouldn't be here, but you're here and we value your presence and what you have to offer this company. And I want every student, who has that opportunity, to know that when you walk in that door, know that you were there for a reason, and you're just as valuable, in my opinion, as anybody else in that company. Because you could be that one idea that, again, that's how the Post-it note got done, that changes an industry from the inside out. So do not sell yourself short. Does that help?
Yeah. Okay, you discussed being purposeful and the importance of purposefulness.
Uh-huh.
What if you don't know what you want to do? How do you figure that out?
There are several, I would say, assessments that you can have that will help you do that. And can't name them right off the top of my head right now, but that's exactly what a lot of them are out there to do. I'd be more than happy to look up some and send the list to Amy, so that this person knows, because sometimes you don't know. And even as a coach, I have coached people to help them get there. So I can also share some tools that you can use that can be helpful. But this is really where you've got to, is basically asking yourself and thinking through some of these. But there's some really good assessments out there that can help you do that as well. Okay.
You mentioned that you read a lot in the past. You continue to read a lot. What did you read, and what would you recommend reading?
I read a lot of, again, technology books, but when it comes to leadership, I have 2 books, and they're actually sitting on this desk right now. They have been probably around for a while, but they are some of my favorite books because they're different. This one is Quantum Leadership, a resource for healthcare innovation. It says healthcare, but it actually, to me, rethinks leadership from the top, from the bottom up. And it gives you a different way of thinking about how to lead. A lot of what I shared with you today are things that I got from this book. And I actually used this book when I was working. So that's why, and I still use it. I think it's important. The other one I would recommend is the author, Tom Peters. And he has a website with a lot of information on leadership. This one was reimagined. He wrote years ago, but he challenged how we think and how to think differently. And I have found that when I've shared things from this, and there's a lot of other ones as well, but those are the two that come to mind, it actually gets people to start thinking differently and really saying that there could be a different way to do things and even a better way. But again, I would be more than happy to put together some list on that list, some resources that here's some things that you can books you can read, and then also there's some websites that you can go to that have all the tools and things that you want to know about leadership that are free to use.
Okay, great. All right. Emotional intelligence. Engineers are often viewed as being low in emotional intelligence. Can you, okay, I think you partially answered this, or you did answer. Can you increase your emotional intelligence? How much does training really help?
I think training helps a lot, but it's what you do, what you learn in that training that helps even more. From my experience, training was just, again, like this. It's given me the seeds that I need to plant and start working to know, to start developing that skill and capability. It's not going to be where I flip a switch and, okay, now I'm emotionally intelligent. You're going to know, it doesn't work that way. But you're going to get things that you practice, and you may not get the results that you asked, that you wanted by doing some of the things you learn, but you learn from that and you figure out, what do I need to do? And if in the workplace, if you get an opportunity to have a coach, and a lot of companies have those, I would recommend that, somebody that will give you honest feedback. I also have seen people where they partnered up together to kind of be accountable to each other, where I'm going to try to really understand and sit back and listen, and improve my listening so that I can better connect with my team. And have somebody, observe that and say, okay, how am I doing? Did I really pick up what you were really thinking? One of the experiments I had when I was working on my master's in education that was pretty unusual was that they put us in a room, about 8 of us, and told us to hold a meeting, and they videotaped it. And when they videotaped it, they came in after the meeting and they started playing the tape, and they said, I want you to stop the tape at any time you were feeling a certain way about someone and you didn't tell them. And so you would stop the tape that, okay, when Sue put her arms like this, I knew she wasn't listening to me. And it was this was one of those things we were trying to connect with. That was the most insightful training this again was just an experiment we were doing at the university, but I was so excited about it because I knew we can do that in the workplace. And I remember going to my professor and I said, oh, we need this in the workplace. How can I help make that happen? She looked at me and she said, they're not ready for the truth. And I thought, okay, that was years ago. I'm thinking, I hope they're ready now. But really is those unsaid things that get in the way. And what we were trying to do is, how do you communicate effectively if that person didn't realize that you didn't like the way they folded their arms, or when you did like this, how do you respectfully say, this is what I was feeling when you did that. Is that really what you meant? Or so that person knows, okay, don't do that again. If that's not what you're trying to do. So I would look for creative ways in companies that are doing things like that will really give you an opportunity to experience it and grow from that experience as you develop your emotional intelligence. And I know I've talked too much, so just cut me off when you want to.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Please talk about the balance of self-acceptance and the mask that is self-marketing.
The balance of self-acceptance
and the mask that is self-marketing.
So I'm assuming you're saying that you have to put on a different mask when you're trying to be.
I think that's what they're asking.
Okay, but I would not recommend that.
Okay.
Because that was my whole point about just doing you and being you. I don't believe, and I'm not a proponent of putting on a fake face or fake mask and not letting people know how you lead or who you are as a leader, or even as an individual. And as an example, my team knew that I had their best interests at heart, and I would do anything I could to help them get what they wanted, whether it was in my organization or out. And that was with all honesty. It wasn't something where I was conniving to do. So it was really about being open and honest with them. And we actually created bonds that last for years because of that. And again, when I talk about, let me get some water. A lot of people weren't really keen with me being as visionary as I was, because I would always have an idea that my boss would say, "You way up here." But I knew that's who I was. I knew when to present it, but I didn't hide it. As far as not ever putting a vision out there, my thing was timing's everything. So I'm going to look for that opportunity, and when it's my time, I'm going to take you here. Mm-hmm. But I do not recommend putting a mask on, because I don't know who that serves. Your company, any company, in my opinion, is hiring you for the uniqueness and the talent you bring. Don't hide that, because you may be just the one they've been looking for.
Okay.
That helps.
Sure. 2 more questions. All right. First question. How do you wrestle with having a moral conflict? How do you wrestle with having a moral conflict with the company mission or policies from higher ups or equal level employees?
Okay. And I have had some of that, and share with you my experience. We were having a change in the company, and part of that change was that everybody had to be retrained on something. And what the company said, well, we're going to be spending tens of thousands of dollars to train individuals. They have to stay here for a while. And that bothered me, because my thinking was, well, if there's opportunity elsewhere and they're not fulfilled, but they have to take this training, they don't have a choice, why can't they, go somewhere else? And what they were going to do, if you left within this time period and taking this training, you would have to pay this $10,000s of dollars back. And so, and I was like, okay, how do I make sense of this? Because it wasn't really registering with me. So I had a friend who was an attorney, and an employment attorney, and we went to lunch, and I explained to him, and he looked at me and he said, "Angela," he said, you're management at this company, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "They pay your paycheck, don't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, then that's exactly what you're going to do, because leaders," now I could leave, was one of the things that he said. He said, "If you don't like it, then don't stay the manager." He said, "But the company was in all their rights to do what they, need to do. And as a manager and as a leader, that's what I signed on to do. And if not, then I could sign off." Mm-hmm. And so that hit me to understand my role, in supporting the company. But if it was something that I truly could not support, then I probably wouldn't have been there either. I didn't have a conflict in the end when all that happened, because the training was awesome and people got what they wanted. So it was almost like they put this buffer in there. But what I learned that day from the attorney was that you have a choice. Either you can live with what the company's doing and stay in that leadership and management role, or you can choose to find another opportunity. And that made sense to me when I talked that out with him. So I hope that helps.
Sure. All right, last question. This goes back to the very beginning when you talked about the rate of change. So with things changing so fast, what will society look like in 20 years, and what will engineering look like in 20 years?
Well, you know what? That's a really good question. And I honestly think it will look a lot different than what it does today. I think even going through this pandemic and having to work remotely has opened up some new doors and opportunities that we probably would have taken a little longer to get to. So I do think we will leverage more remote talent. which means I was always a believer I should be able to hire talent anywhere, and tap into it, and we should be able to do that with the capabilities we have. I think that's more of a truth now than it used to be years ago. I also think that engineering is going to be a very exciting place because, in my opinion, that's where the magic happens, where the ideas come in. And it is going to be necessary that we speed things up in a way where, they're going to be looking for, again, what's the next thing that we can produce to help us over here or do something differently there. I think the world is changing. Our infrastructures are changing. There's probably nothing that's not changing at this point in time. So from my perspective, I'm probably all over the place right now because my head's saying, oh, this is really exciting. It's going to look a lot different, in my opinion, just like you see a lot of the workplaces or the large buildings aren't like they used to be, and people aren't building them like they used to, because again, they can tap into talent anywhere right now with the technology and feel like someone's just there. You can do robotics, which I love too, when I talk about healthcare, where you can do surgeries. I've seen some of that online. They're doing surgeries, the surgeon's on the other side of the world, and he's just monitoring or running the robot to do the surgery. And those are things that I think we're kind of stepping our toe in right now, but I think there's going to be explosion once they figure out what some of this new technology is going to do, that you will be able to find your prize because there's going to be so much opportunity to do the things that your heart really is pulling you to do. And I'm all over the place, but it's just going to be exciting, in my opinion.
Well, very good. Angela, thank you very much for sharing this time with us and sharing your thoughts. It's been really, really good. And I want to thank everybody for attending. I'm sure everybody would clap now if we were all in a room together, which would have been great. But anyway, thank you for attending. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you guys, and much success and love. And again, I'm thinking about you guys, and I wish you guys the best life going forward. And I know you're going to be something that we can be very proud of in what you're doing.
And we want to wish everybody a great end of the semester, and we look forward to starting this again next semester. So until next semester, we wish everybody having a great end of the semester and a great break. So with that, good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.